What's up, parish orphans and retrogrades? Happy Monday afternoon, if there's such a thing. Today, the case for patriarchy, which is inevitable, is out. You can get it on Sophia Institute Press. It's causing waves already, which we knew it would. The book is called The Case for Patriarchy, and it makes a proof from a Christian point of view, not even just a Catholic point of view, but a Christian point of view, that there is no such thing as Christian feminism. So it's making a big splash. Get your copy today from Amazon.com or from SophiaInstitute.com. The reason I bring it up as relevant to our show today, Aristotle on friendships, when to end them specifically. I'll tell you all about Aristotelian friendship and the three kinds, but when to end them in particular is because lots of people are saying online, look, I got friends that are mad at me for taking Tim Gordon's side on the case for patriarchy. I didn't come up with it. I've endorsed a fan and a patron's idea about something called the Case for Patriarchy Challenge, which is to go into a public space like Starbucks or whatever and read the book like this, right? And let them all see you reading it like that. And observe. That's the Case for Patriarchy Challenge. One of my good friends and patrons, Bob, has already set up shop at a restaurant and started the Case for Patriarchy Challenge today. But people are reporting on Twitter that they're losing friends over endorsements of the book. This, my parish orphans and retrogrades, the issue of the patriarchy is the issue beneath all the other issues. It is the leftism beneath all the other leftisms used by the Luciferians to subvert the order of Christendom. This is it. This is the one. Beneath homosexualism, beneath transgenderism, beneath Marxism and socialism. This is it. So people are losing friends over it. And I've gotten lots of questions besides over the last few years from good-hearted Catholics who are asking me, what of the end of friendships? How does this work? And it's an issue that's near and dear to every last one of us. What is my duty to my old friend? You know, a lot of us are either converts or reverts in the ranks of the faithful sons and daughters of the church. There aren't really any people who are Catholic, grew up Catholic, faithful Catholic, stayed there, never fell away, and just have always lived in that, under that shady protective tree known as Roman Catholicism. Most of us that grew up in the church did so like me. The 80s, 90s, 2000s, our catechesis was horrible. It made low-key atheists or agnostics out of us, and we had to, by some act of grace of our Lord, come back to the church later. Or there were faithful Protestants who realized through their studies of Scripture, and usually the patristics, that Roman Catholicism is the only true form of Christianity. Whatever. The point is, it's a very rare space. Almost everybody grew up in a different position, under a different worldview than the current one, than they situate themselves, they find themselves in right now. And I'm talking about the parish orphans and the retrogrades, you, my friends. This means that the friendships that all of us cultivated when we were young, and I include myself in this, they don't embrace all of those friends out there from our youth, from middle school, high school, college, even grad school. They don't embrace this kind of stuff. The case for patriarchy. They don't necessarily embrace that. I talk to you, you feedback to me. It's something of an echo chamber, right? Except on a couple issues. I have people in my audience that are SSPX, and they know I don't go to an SSPX chapel, and we can kind of agree to disagree there. But culturally, I was talking about this with my friend Joe recently. Culturally, we hold all the same views. It's still an echo chamber. Even if we disagree on some technical ecclesial matter within the church, it's kind of outsized. That's why I'm not really that interested in talking about it. But on issues like any of the issues I'm addressing in any of my three books, my first book, my second book, and now the case for patriarchy, we all kind of agree, and we forget that most of the people out there don't. Namely, the folks that you and I grew up calling friends, grew up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever, calling our friends. And people out there, I'm telling you, they get mad They get actually mad at you for reading a book like this. Well, my parish orphans, what do you think in my corner of the world folks say for me, the author of such a text or texts? If you look at the complete Gordon home library, right? This is countercultural stuff. These are weird times. We used to say good times when we're ending a conversation or changing the subject. Now we say, well, weird times. Just around the corner, we're going to say end times, So the master of those who know is Aristotle, according to Dante Alighieri, and pretty much everyone else who knows agrees. Aristotle is the father of those who know things about natural virtues, things about, non-revealed truths here below. There are 3 types of friendships for Aristotle. There's actually only one real type of friendship, and it is true friendship, and it's based on virtue. It's oriented around virtue. There are 2 subtypes of friendships that you can read about this if you like in Book 8 of the Nicomachean Ethics. Book 8 and the first third of Book 9 in the Ethics. I offer a course on this. We're going into our 4th week, so it might be a bit late to jump into this one, but I've taught this course 3 or 4 times since I moved to Mississippi. This is Book 8 and Book 9, and we do all 10 books as we go through. Okay, so here's what I want to teach you today. Just some basic stuff. And it's not in-depth. It's not hard. It's not too frustrating to learn. It's actually quite a joy. There are 3 types of friendship. Only one of them is what Aristotle will deign true friendship. Let's call that type 3. Type 1 friendship is the lowest. It's a friendship of utility. This is the kid who lives down the street who you play with because he's got a ping pong table or the game console you like. Adults do friendships of utility too. Without even knowing it, we all engage in this sort of friendship. It's part of human life. It doesn't mean necessarily you're willfully being a user, but it's the lowest form of friendship, and it's not actually a true form of friendship. The second type of friendship is a friendship of pleasure. This, Aristotle will say, much more closely resembles true friendship than friendships of utility. Friendships of pleasure are where you veritably like the person you're spending time with. You think they are enjoyable personally. They have fun personality traits or admirable personality traits. We have to pause here for a second because when we talk about virtue in Aristotle and eventually in Thomas, we're talking about the Greek word arete, which just means an excellence, any form of excellence. Whereas most of the Nicomachean Ethics is about moral arete, moral virtue or moral excellence, which you would recognize, right? Think of the 4 cardinal virtues. There's also intellectual virtue, like prudence, in Latin prudentia, that is discussed in Book 6 of the Ethics. Well, the point is there are also physical aretes, excellences. So like you might become friends with a guy that if you're good at basketball and he's good at basketball and you're the 2 best on your team, you each share that physical excellence in common. And then, maybe you're both funny. You've got a kind of comedic arete. Well, that's not quite a moral virtue yet, even though it's of the human personality. And just because you're kind of 2 wiseacres who are good at basketball, you can have a years-long, decades-long friendship based on this. And here's the kicker. Most of us who grew up with 1 foot in the church at best, most of us grew up with sort of both feet out of the church. This is the highest kind of friendship that most of us were making. And it's a spectrum, like everything in Aristotle. You might have made very, very intimate forms of type 2 friendships of pleasure, meaning you really do admire things about your friend's personality. You really think they're funny. You really think they're smart. You're not just friends of utility. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. It's more than that. And Aristotle describes this in great detail in Book 8. But type 3 friendships are the only ones that count as true friendships. They're true friendships because they are friendships based on mutual virtue. And There is no unity of the virtues, so no one virtue will get you all the others. They're like muscle groups you have to work out one at a time. So like will attract like. Aristotle says this nonsense about opposites attracting is just that. It's spurious, not true. So Aristotle will say that friend A and friend B, if they're true friends, type 3 friends, they are attracted to the virtue in one another. And this is where Taylor Marshall and I used to talk about this. We had it on a bumper sticker. Iron sharpens iron. So your friend's extra courageous, you're extra temperate. He admires your temperance, you admire his courage. You strive to be like him in this way, he strives to be like you in this way. You're bringing each other up the moral ontological spectrum of virtue. And as you get to be better and better people, you realize, oh, what I will for the other person is the good for the other person. Eudaimonia, moral happiness for the other person. It's beautiful. And Aristotle calls it the kingly virtue. You know, it's the one thing that if you had every material possession and morality besides, if you know, all the things you'd think you want, health, wealth, and you're a moral person, if you didn't have good friends, Aristotle says, you would lack them. You would still feel a lacking. It's the kingly virtue. And it's really, really important to the ethics, which is why it takes up like a book and a half in this 10-book treatise. It's the way that human beings, the social animal, the only animal with language or with abstract rational thought, really learns virtue is by our peers. I mean, we get top-down education, but the way that prudence helps us to apply virtue to real-life situations is usually we see a good moral exemplar who we think, I want to make that guy my friend, doing it first. So like attracts like. A true friendship, you must understand, is premised at its center around moral virtue. What attracts your friend to you is your moral virtue. What attracts you to your friend is his moral virtue. And you literally climb the ladder of morality, which is a unique kind of human good. The animals don't have it. Together. You do so together. Now, what we're talking about in today's episode that so many people have been tweeting about just for reading this book or tweeting about it or sharing it with their family and friends because it's so controversial just to teach Christianity, the patriarchy, such as it is that, look, I'm losing friends over this. My family's getting mad at me just for stating the truth. What am I to do? Well, it's a big topic, and I wanted to talk about it anyway because it's a big part of life. It's a prominent aspect of being a human being who, like you and like me, are trying to every day get a little bit better in the eyes of heaven, according to the logic of God, to be more pleasing to God. As Christ says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. We're striving at that. You get the virtues one by one. There's no virtue the way Plato thought, which will get all the others, like the one ring to rule them all and bring them all. You got to get them one by one. So here's the question. What to do when there has grown a clear disparity between you, let's say your friend A, and you've really been working at this, and friend B, right? You're a 9 on the overall virtue spectrum, and your friend's a 5. Well, Aristotle says disparities can come to pass in only 2 ways. There are 2 ways. Situation A, you were both the same at the start of summer camp. You go away to summer camp, your friend's at home. You're both 5s. And you really work on virtues throughout the summer, and you become a moral agent. Then your friend, and your friend's still just at a 5, you rise to an 8 over the space of 3 months' time at your summer camp, right? Your friend B did not go down. He stayed the same. You went up. In these situations, Aristotle's very specific. Look, you want to be as patient as you can because your friend has not backslid. He hasn't done anything expressive of bad faith. As far as he knows, he's looking forward to his buddy getting back from camp, and you've just made some moral progress, which, give him some credit, will sound shocking in some ways. It'll sound stark. You might come back and be like, oh, I can't do that. There are actually more limitations on what activities I can share with you. Yeah, you can't, I don't know. If we were friends and the friendship was premised before in a kind of borderline immoral way on drinking 9 beers every Friday night together, well, now I can only have 4, and friend B's out there don't like this. Or if you're like, hey, look, I have to tell you, B, this thing that either you and I did together or just even you do, you're not allowed to do it. That's rough. And we have to be, Aristotle says, specially cautious. Doesn't mean you change what you're going to say. Doesn't mean the truth changes, because it doesn't. Aristotle says, I love my friend Plato, but I love the truth more. It means that we have to be extra patient going into this situation A, where you are friend A and you rose in virtue. Your friend did not backslide or do anything. He comes back, or you come back from summer camp, and now there's this disparity that your rise, your burgeoning of the moral virtues engendered. That's a different situation. He says, what you do is you try to lead by example and see if your friend is not attracted to the new virtues in you. And this is really important to do tactfully, but it doesn't mean you're hiding your light under a bushel barrel. You show him, and you give him the opportunity to move with you to become a better person in whatever virtues we're talking about. And also, you're giving your friendship itself, the kind of third term between the two of you, the chance to move from a very intimate friendship of pleasure, which can feel a lot like a true friendship. You can be very intimate, very close, care a lot about the other person, but you're not quite caring about one another's goods, mutual eudaimonias, in the even intimate friendship of pleasure until you move the friendship into the realm of type 3, a true friendship. Why? Because if you're not doing the right things, then there's no way to attain eudaimonia, even naturally. And of course, we would make a kind of secondary analysis as Christians, which Aristotle was not. The same thing with the supernatural virtues, faith, hope, and love, which we get from the sacraments and graces of Christ and whatnot. It's the same story there. You can't truly love your friend as much as you're claiming to if you are just fine enjoying the limited virtues that you do have in this type 2 friendship. So you got to try to lead your friend. Now, if you do and your friend resents you, as friends B out there often resent friends A for becoming more virtuous, and it's not working out the way that it can if you optimize things, the friendship will die. There's only one true type of friends, and it's type 3, virtue friendships. Aristotle is crystal clear on this point. So the friendship is fated to die a mortal death if your friend does not take an interest in following you. Now, it's a question of using our prudence. It's up to you. Okay, how long am I going to wait? My friend still mocks me for being chaste, which is a new thing maybe. For being temperate, which is a new thing maybe. For being amicable instead of getting into bar fights. Maybe that's a new thing. Whatever the source of your friendship was that's now altered because of your moral virtue, well, you have so much time to impart this to your friend whose soul you love, you wish the good for him, to show him, look, the friendship's going to end and your life is going to be less happy unless you actually follow my lead here. The second type of disparity between A's moral virtue and B's is not when A goes away to summer camp and elevates in virtue, but rather when A and B start off as friends. Well, we could still use summer camp, but B falls, from a 5 to a 2. Well, Aristotle is much more clear and much less patient in this area. He says, look, you could try once or twice, but there's really no room for patience here because your friend is actually acting on bad faith and actually diminishes in virtue that he knows he has. So there's always an intellectual component. This doesn't really happen without knowledge, without culpability. See how there's much more culpability before the friend who's the lower part in the pair of friends virtuously In situation A, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't retreated any. He just thinks you're good as friends. But here in situation B, he's actually the one that's gone away to summer camp and become not virtuous, but vicious. He's become more mischievous. Now he's lighting people's lawns on fire for fun, whereas before you used to just go around chucking water balloons at people. Whatever the case is, Aristotle admonishes less patience for friend A, the one who's higher in virtue. Those are the only two possibilities for how one human being can become more virtuous than another, right? It's either you rose or he fell in virtue. And in both cases, it's really important. Check, book 8 and book 9 of the Nicomachean Ethics itself. In both cases, the friendship is doomed to die on the vine if you don't equivocate, if your friend and you don't wind up in roughly the same virtuous headspace. He says, be more patient in situation A than situation B. But in either case, like attracts like. It's a fundamental rule of human moral psychology. And, the relationship's going to die. So and it's sad. There's nothing to mourn. In any case, Aristotle he gives a word. He's so masterful in knowing how all this plays out. He says, look, if he doesn't say if you pass them in the halls, but if you come across your friend after you've kind of left them behind, there ought to be some sort of special attention, special nod, special memoriam given to the fact that, look, we had a special friendship at one point. It was an intimate friendship of pleasure, but except we really did like each other. And so you're always going to root for your friend. You're always maybe waiting passively. Maybe it's after you've kind of announced, look, we can't hang out anymore, but you're always kind of keeping an eye out for your friend coming around. This is, I think, particularly poignant. And it's the reason I raise it with you guys today, which I've already adverted to, is because it's such an ever-present aspect of human life. When I taught high school, the high schoolers loved this aspect of the ethics. But even to grown adults, right? Most of us, converts or reverts, we weren't as Catholic in 1990 or 2000 or 2010 as we are now. That's basically the case with, I think, almost everyone that's watching this program. And the people you surrounded yourself with in 90, 2000, 2010, because like attracts like, they were more close to where you were, what headspace you were in, and what heart space you were in, if I can use a corny term, back then. And so they're going to be shocked by whatever changes you're going through, even if you might look at it and not understand. If you don't read Aristotle, who just sets this out on the shelf clinically, you might be like, why aren't you happy for me? Why can't you be happy for me? You have to understand, because you're now delimiting the activities that bind the friendship together in ways that seem startling, shocking. They seem rigid. They seem judgmental. It seems like you can do less fun stuff than you could before. And to some extent, that's all actually fair charge. That's all a fair charge. To some extent. You can do less, right? I can't drink 9 beers with you on Friday night. It's not temperate. I could drink 3 or 4. I can't go around, if you're 2 single men, you can't go around chasing the skirt in the same fashion you did before, right? There's a modified iteration of the way you can do this in some chaste way, but except it wouldn't really be what you'd call chasing the skirt anymore. Issues of justice now. You might be like, we used to go around throwing water balloons at people at so-and-so's house or this neighborhood or this street corner where people are drinking cafes out on the street. Maybe we should actually go by and say sorry to them. No, your friend's going to hate these ideas. This is human nature. Until he's intellectually converted, at least, he's going to hate these ideas. And he's going to think you're a prig. He's going to think you're being priggish. And the inclination... Well, judgmental. Judgmental is what comes up. Priggish is a good kind of Jane Austen word for it, and people don't use smart Jane Austen words anymore. They'll say stupid words that really have other meanings, but they're proshen equivocals. Good words, judgmental. In the Thomistic context, this means that recto ratio is firing. well. But when people that are using neologisms of our day say, oh, you sound judgmental, they're not giving you a compliment. They're saying that you're a prig, that you have taken to being some stuffy, usually it means hypocritical moral phony. And you couldn't believe what you're saying.
And they're being judgmental.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that these people who are judging you for loving the case for patriarchy or whatever it is, or loving Christ, loving the sacraments, loving the Latin Mass passionately, the way those of us who do, they're the ones being judgmental. And usually they're also the ones recurring to a sin called rash judgment. They're so judgmental that they're doing rash judgment. A lot of times, what this engenders, particularly in groups of guys or girls, is if it's not just one friend, but if you had a friend group and one person kind of rises above, or one or two people, maybe two friends do it together, that would be optimal. Then you get some real nasty backbiting, right? Oh, look at A. He's so high and mighty. He's so judgmental. I'm sure I'm not preaching to a bunch of people that are scratching their heads and saying this sounds so unfamiliar. I've been asked about this a lot. People ask me a lot of questions. The common one is about dating. A lot of single people ask me, hey, how do we work it out in this weird culture that's about to explode? And they also ask me about friendship. They ask me about busted family relations, which are a little more complex, but it's basically the same Aristotelian answer. If you can't get along with adult, relationships, and blood's thicker than water, but you're not bound. There is the leave and cleave passage in Old Testament, which is still on point. So friendship doesn't mean what we thought it meant as kids. It doesn't mean, it's just the person that you go have a pleasurable time with, or you play basketball with, or you play video games with. It actually means any person who's like-minded. There's fellow feeling engendered by your reciprocal attempts to become good. And from that relationship stems a mutual admiration that sharpens iron on either end. That's friendship, and it can exist between brothers or parents, right? Aristotle refers to a father and a son as a friendship, a true friendship, type 3 friendship, if it's a good one, between unequals. Aristotle also calls the friendship between husband and wife a friendship between unequals. So it can be a true friendship, not pleasure, not utility. True friends. And then, of course, it applies to our non-relations who we grew up with, or we met at Mass, or we met, and we typically call them friends. It applies to them as well. But the rule of when to break off these relationships, when to fight for them, when to push, when to pull, that kind of thing. Go to Book 8 of the Nicomachean Ethics, the easiest and one of the most profound and practical books of philosophy in the Western canon. So I'm plugging Aristotle's book right now. I hope this has helped, because I get this question a lot, and it seems to be coming up a lot because of Case for Patriarchy, which is interesting. It's the main attack on the revolution that's hurting us. Remember, there's a clerical patriarchy which has failed us Catholics, rendering us parish orphans. I know. I talk about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot for the last 3 years. But trust me, the lay patriarchy, the household patriarchy of the ecclesiola, the church in miniature at home, if we would get that in order, none of the clerical patriarchy's failings would even touch us. We'd barely even notice them. The fact that most fathers have failed their households has destroyed Christendom, more than the fact that even parish priests are doing it. And I'm not just talking about divorce. That's such a cop-out. That's half the people. Most of the non-divorced half of homes are not being raised by a benevolent patriarch. And we have to reverse this. That's what the Case for Patriarchy is all about. We need kings leading society, not 14-year-olds being depicted on, YouTube, or used to be MTV, dancing with half their clothes off. We shouldn't be admiring the young. Not household matriarchs who are beautiful when they play their role right, but patriarchs, the leaders. And how to have friends is one of the most important kingly male virtues. Aristotle calls it the kingly virtue, And men nowadays don't know this. True friendship is based on true virtue. It's the central part of true friendship. So you guys need to learn this. We all need to come back around to that which made Western civilization great. Like this channel, subscribe, click the notification. Please leave a comment if you can. Comment on Case for Patriarchy. I don't think Amazon's allowing comments before October the 1st. Also, I'm telling you guys now, get out of your blue states, get to your red states. If you're willing to do this at all, do it sooner rather than later, because at some point, it's significantly possible that they will start closing borders. Go to realestateforlife.org, realestateforlife.org, and some good Catholic or pro-lifer will help you make this large headache into a smaller headache. Let me put it that way. It's just like I did. I didn't use Real Estate for Life because I didn't know them then, but I would have when I moved from the bluest of the blue, California, to the reddest of the red, Mississippi. God bless you guys. Go get Case for Patriarchy today. Order it online if you don't yet have it. It's making big waves. Thanks.